Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing in our education and crisis series. Tonight is going to be police in schools. We hope that this will be enlightening and engaging for you. Joining us is Melody. And Melody is going to take us through the police-free schools. Police in schools, so that we'll learn more about policing, how it got started, what its history is looking like, and then how do we achieve police-free schools. So we're really looking forward to sharing this with you, and I'm going to turn this over to Melody.
Hello, everyone. So I would like to start off by saying Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. We stand in solidarity with the original nations on this land, and we look forward to having our November 9th community education series where we talk about Native American boarding schools and the COVID response. We think that will be very important, also very timely, especially talking about infectious diseases in the school system. So education system in crisis, police-free schools. Police-free schools, kick out cops, counselors not cops is one of our favorite topics because we think that addressing this addresses so many things. Policing students is attached to approach that we take to discipline, and it's attached to how we view certain students, especially minority students from low-income families. So we want to address that and create a school environment that's inclusive and welcoming of all students and sees behavior as another learning opportunity. So why do we have police in schools? Well, first I would like to point out that we have a new report, www.gwinnettstop.org, called A Review of Policing in Gwinnett County Public Schools by one of our former students and advocates, Amina Basuri. She goes over how policing in schools started in Gwinnett County and in Georgia. And so she goes into detail. So we definitely recommend you read that. But one of the points that she made in her report, and this is a quote from it, is that in the 90s, Georgia local school boards began assigning SROs in response to the fear around high-profile school shootings and purported juvenile crime. So we know that in the 90s, policing in general was continuously increasing, even though crime wasn't increasing at that rate. And so in response to high-profile shootings, even though shootings like Columbine happened at the end of the 90s, it still contributed to this fear that, our schools are getting out of control. Our schools are dangerous places, especially schools that have majority Black students. You saw increased policing there, but not an increase in resources. So what does GCPS say about SROs? This is from their website. They say that Gwinnett School resource officers help educate students and parents about safety issues, while also protecting them and preventing inappropriate behavior on school campuses. The program was established and modeled to reflect a multifaceted approach to community policing in schools, a commonly referred to as the triad model. Gwinnett School resource officers engage in three types of activities: law enforcement, counseling, and mentoring, and law-related education. So let's break that down. So let's talk about, do SROs fulfill this mission? Well, first, let me point out the picture. This is a school resource officer, or this is a school resource officer or officer that responded to South Gwinnett High School by brutally arresting a student, which left them unconscious and bloodied. So Now, in this conversation, when we're talking about misbehavior, when we're talking about responding to the behavior of students, sometimes we need to discuss how the police escalate and actually create a problem where there is no problem. So prevent misbehavior. So in this case, in the photo that you're seeing of the incident where the student was left unconscious after the police tackled the student onto the ground and put his full body weight of a 7-foot police officer, put his full body weight onto the student. Um, the police officer is misbehavior, is the unfair treatment. But as far as everyone else goes, preventing misbehavior, it's very important to know that police and schools in the community do not prevent incidents, they respond. They mostly respond to incidents or harm or in sometimes violence, very few times violence. So in the school system where you have hundreds and sometimes thousands of kids in a classroom, if we're going to address misbehavior, we have to get to the root of the misbehavior and we have to meet the need of the student and figure out why the student is acting this way and how we can support them. Police are not trained to deal with that. They are trained to respond and respond violently many times, like you see in this photo at Gwinnett County Public Schools. The police officers are not trained to counsel. Right here, they're actually tackling a student. Counselors are trained to counsel. And so we need professionals who are trained in childhood development, professionals who understand, who have therapeutic strategies, who understand how to meet the needs of a child, who understand how to navigate their emotions. We need people who understand psychology, especially in children who are developing until they're about age 25. And so police are not equipped to counsel. And another point that our director, Marlene, points out is that police are mandated to use information that they have to against the student in an investigation. It can be used against them, and it has been when they're arrested. That's part of the rights that students are read, or part of the rights that people are read. So a counselor actually has to use confidentiality and cares about the well-being of the child and creating an environment where they feel safe to actually talk about the emotions and the things that they're going through. Law-related education is the third prong that they discuss in the triad model. Police officers are not educators. Educators are educators. So teachers who go to school and get their degree in education, regardless of what grade level or topic or what topic they're discussing, they are most equipped to talk about law-related issues. If it's very important that you discuss the law and what happens with that, then you should talk to the social studies teachers in high school, talk to the teachers that teach government. They can teach that issue if it's so important and so pressing to GCPS. Police officers who have guns and tasers and batons are not in a position to educate hundreds, if not thousands of kids in one school. And so we need to prevent misbehavior. We need to address needs to counsel students, counsel and mentor students. We need counselors, and to do law-related education, we need educators, and police are none of that. So what causes misbehavior? As parents, students, educators, advocates, and community members in this coalition, we know that the following causes misbehavior. Overcrowded classrooms, having too many kids in one classroom. We know that's certainly an issue in Gwinnett County schools, especially in schools that are not in white affluent clusters, that those classrooms tend to have bigger sizes in gifted and college prep classes. We know that academic challenges causes misbehavior. Many students in GCPS are below reading level, a significant amount of students, especially in certain schools where you'll have even most of the students like a large percent of the students are below their reading level or are struggling academically in multiple subjects. And so if the child does not understand the material and they're around people who are their age, what is the incentive for them to do the work instead of talking to their classmates or doing other things that is not education? Disengagement. They may not understand the material. There's many different reasons for disengagement, including lack of nutrition, concentration. Then we also talk about disabilities, students with disabilities, especially if this child has ADD, ADHD, their behavior can be a manifestation of their disability. Lack of behavioral support, so lack of therapy and other behavioral support, and discrimination. So we know that students who have the same misbehaviors, depending on which child it is, they receive different infractions or punishments in the school system. And we want to replace a system that doesn't punish children, that actually restores them and finds the root cause of misbehavior. More pressing needs. So we understand now that GCPS spends over $10 million, millions and millions of dollars on GCPS school resource officers. Instead of spending money on school resource officers, millions and millions of dollars, we can spend it on things that actually contribute to directly contribute to education and will also reduce discipline problems. So language support, fully funded language programs. So that means that every child should be able to learn in their primary language. We have many students in Gwinnett County Public Schools who are learning from a teacher who is not speaking their language. So they're literally hearing commands shouted at them all day that is in their language, but not actually learning curriculum in their language. Fully funded special education program. We still have students who have not been evaluated, or the full needs of their IEP is not being met, their individualized education program. So, and we also have resources that are not available to some students, especially now that some of them are learning at home, digital learning. So we need to make sure that that is fully funded. Digital support. So this was a problem before the pandemic. There weren't not enough Chromebooks. There were students who didn't have internet at home. Not every child there are some things that students can do on their cell phone. Some students don't have phones or cell service. So there needs to be even playing field across the board to make sure that every student can fully access internet and other digital devices. And then a fully funded nutrition program. We still have students who have food taken off their tray because they cannot afford it. A child that is hungry is not going to pay attention and will not have the energy to learn, and they will be distracted. Hunger is a distraction. So all of these things, which are key to learning, are not fully funded, but the police are given $10 million a day to police GCPS schools. That is a major issue. Discipline and safety. What needs to be done? How do we solve discipline and safety issues in Gwinnett County Public Schools? Gwinnett STOP has developed a comprehensive plan using restorative justice, anti-racist training, and culturally relevant curriculum to create an environment at GCPS schools that addresses the root of misbehavior and invests in building up students, not ruining their futures. So we have released last week during our week of action, we released 7 demands from the coalition titled A New Vision of Safety for GCPS Schools. And so I'm going to quickly go through the demands. We had an event that's already been pre-recorded and it's posted on our Facebook You can also see our demands on the website at www.gwinnettstop.org. But we've already gone through in great detail what these demands are, but we're going to go over them quickly and end on why restorative justice is important. So we want to eliminate SROs from schools, from GCPS schools. This is all regular presence, police, law enforcement, no scheduled visits or patrols. It should not be a part, or the school should not be a part of the beat. We need to have a new system that is not focused, that rejects policing in its entirety. Reinvest the 10.5 million GCPS police budget into hiring additional school mental and behavioral health and restorative justice staff. We've always needed this, but now at a time where so many things in society are uncertain and there is a lot of hardship and loss in this country, we need mental health professionals. We cannot continue to just to have counselors do academic support and focus on college and getting students to take standardized tests to get into post-secondary education. We have to focus on mental health as well, and restorative justice. Revise the student discipline policies and practices to include restorative practices within the PBIS framework. We already have a PBIS framework, but that framework is underutilized. It needs to be built out fully, and it needs to have a restorative justice as a part of that. It also needs to be evaluated to see how effective it is, and we need to see the progress throughout the years of how GCPS is using this PBIS framework instead of just adding more money to the police budget. We need to implement a culturally relevant, inclusive curriculum in elementary, middle, and high school. And this is so important because disengagement happens when the curriculum is not culturally relevant. When we teach things that do not speak to certain populations in the classroom, especially Black students, especially Indigenous students, and we teach things that are not true, do not tell the full story. That is when students start to disengage because they do not see themselves in this curriculum, and that causes misbehavior. Transparent review and reporting of student achievement and discipline, including arrests and use of force. This is something that is needed to make sure that the discipline in arrest is up to community standards. GCPS needs to be responsible and responsive to the community needs. If there is something happening in the schools, a pattern, we should be aware of that, and we should be able to have a discussion with the school system on how to address the problem. Ongoing anti-bias and cultural competency, professional development for all GCPS. So sometimes, and we know for GCPS, the staff does not reflect the diversity of the students. Gwinnett County is one of the most diverse counties in the Southeast. The students speak over 100 languages. This is not the staff that is teaching GCPS, especially the educators. So we need to make sure that the staff reflect the students and that they are aware of teaching people who grew up differently than them and who have different cultural backgrounds. This is key, especially in discipline, because a lot of things, the way that, for example, Black girls respond to a situation in the class is read as an attitude or read as anger, when really someone who understood that background would see this as a normal reaction. So it's really important that we have staff who understand this. Establish a protocol for the rare occasions that police are called to the school, and it should be in very extreme circumstances. Other than that, there should be a different restorative approach. And one of the quotes that our executive director, Marlon, always says is as misbehavior is the product of an unmet need. And too often at GCPS, that need is not only unmet, it's exacerbated by how the school discipline responds to that student. And so we need a practice that is restorative. So here's a little graph to describe why restorative justice is important. So we see an unmet need, misbehavior because of that unmet need, because these students are children, they are minors, their brain is developing and they're learning how to respond to situations in an appropriate manner. And so then they're suspended when they misbehave, and then it leads to the unmet need once again. So we are asking for a approach that breaks this cycle and has an exit for the student, so they can go from unmet need to therapy instead of an unmet need to misbehavior to suspensions. The same students are suspended over and over and over and over again until they're so far behind they drop out of school or they're expelled. That does not help anyone. It also doesn't help the teachers to have kids who are in and out of the classroom, and you have to keep up with where they're at in school, what they're doing, or they're suspended out of school, and you cannot keep track of the work that they're doing at home and what happens when they come back and they're far behind everyone else. We need to invest the millions of dollars in the police that we invested in the police for the school, and invest that in restorative justice staff and counselors and community intervention workers. A child who is in elementary school, middle school, high school, we should not be determining that they have no future based on a few mistakes that they've made at a very young age. So it's important that we do restorative justice. It's a practice that focuses on repairing harm by holding the person responsible and accountable to the person that they harmed, and also accountable to the community. So let's say that a student harms another student or says something very demeaning or bigoted to another student. Kicking them out of the classroom does not truly hold them responsible for what they did. They need to confront that behavior, understand why it was wrong, understand how it impacted the other student, and answer to not only that student, but the whole classroom. Because what often happens is the student is kicked out and does that same behavior again, or other people in the classroom, other students in the classroom see that behavior and think it's okay, and they replicate it in their own ways. We have to go to the root of these problems, but we also need investment in a system to do that. The teachers are already very overwhelmed. The admin, they're also overwhelmed. We need to hire staff to actually do this type of work and do wraparound services and therapy so that we can actually help students get better and help them get back on track. We think that restorative justice involves accountability and healing. It is not unrealistic or far-fetched. What is unrealistic is repeatedly cycling students in and out of suspension to resolve an issue. We need a system that addresses why a student is behaving a certain way, how we can help them, and what they can do to be accountable to their behavior towards others. The current system does not do that, and we need to teach students how to interact with peers and adults. So it's our hope that with the 7 demands and with the $10 million being spent into the police, reinvested into restorative justice, that we can actually provide a true model for safety at GCPS. Because when students have all the support that they need, that their needs are met, and they have clear guidelines for their expectations and the resources to meet those expectations, then all the students at GCPS will truly be safe. So this is how you can contact us. You can go to www.gwinnettstop.org. We also, you can email us if you have any questions, or if you would like to contribute, or if there's some information you would like for us to know. info@gwinnetstop.org is how you can email us. You can also follow us on Twitter at GwinnettStop. And we're so happy that you were tuned in with us today. Remember, November 9th, we'll be having our Native American boarding schools in the COVID response. I think that it's very timely that we discuss this. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Melody. That was great information, for sure, for sure. Really, really appreciate you sharing all of that knowledge. Someone was asking more about restorative justice, and I'm not sure if they got their question answered they put it in the chat. So they were asking, what is restorative justice? If you could just go back over that again, that would be helpful.
Yes. So the way that we respond to misbehavior in the schools right now is punitive. It's punishment. So restorative justice is how we address harm. Okay, so and when one person does something to another that is negative, we call that harm. And so restorative justice is the way to rectify that harm by using several different practices. So we use, there's a restorative justice circle where we have students come around in a circle and actually talk about what happened. We have therapeutic interventions. We have many different ways in which staff, restorative justice staff who are trained in this can actually come in and show staff, show teachers, show students how to actually discuss what happened and how they can be held accountable moving forward. So there's many different ways. It looks different depending on the school, that system that you're in. But what we're trying to do differently is not just give a student a citation, kick them out of the classroom, put them in another room where they're not being seen or heard, and the same thing repeats again for the next day of school. Restorative justice is the opposite of that, and it actually goes to see what is the problem that is causing the student to act this way in the classroom. So is it issues at home? Do they need nutritional support? Are a lot of students are behind in their reading? So it's going to the root cause and coming up with practices that actually solve that.
Thank you for that. Some of the things that's also one of the things that's also used in and when you implement restorative practices is like implementing a peer conflict court where there's a mediation process for what happened. The person who was harmed is part of that process. There's a full unpacking, and quite honestly, students tend to respond more to their peers than the adults anyway. So their peers are now holding them accountable. If they did some harm to the school community overall, there would be someone in that discussion to tell them what they did. And then the actions that take place afterwards would be to repair that harm. No one wants to be judged by their last bad mistake. I know I don't want to be, right? And so it really gives a student a way to repair that harm, understand the harm that they did, because if we don't teach people that in this divisive world that we're in currently could use a lot of mediation and some restorative practices happening. But we need to teach conflict mediation. We need to embody it and we need to demonstrate what that looks like. So yeah, it's a very necessary thing. There are lots of schools who are beginning to implement it. You really do need staff who are trained in it, and not just superficially trained, but really steeped in the practices, the knowledge, because anything can be turned into something that's extremely punitive again. And we're trying to help young people grow and learn. And for the question of what does it cost to implement, I'm going to say It definitely, even if we used every point of the 10 point, almost $5 million that the police that we're spending on SROs in Gwinnett, even if we used every dime of that, do we have a measurement of what it costs to not send that person down the school to prison pipeline?
Right.
There's a direct cost to that. There's prison, there's the cost to the community for maintaining those places. There's the loss to the community for not having that person in our community contributing in a positive way. They're not contributing to the society of the greater good. They're not contributing to the economy. I know folks like dollar amounts assessed to value. Well, there are real dollar amounts that miss. Students who end up in the school to prison pipeline usually don't fare well later in life. So as they're moving forward, they've missed out on their education. So them actually being able to really reach a point in life where they're making enough money to support themselves, where they're happy. I don't know about you all, but I want happy people living around me, my community. I want people living around me who feel fulfilled, who are able to get involved in the community, who are able to put in. You know, we cannot just look at it as a just take out and just exist. Who can put in and really add to our community? And I think we have to look at those overall costs that we're seeing, not just that day, not that year and that year's budget, but over a lifetime, because that's what we're looking to impact. It's not a moment, it's a movement, and we have to do it, have to make those commitments.
Yes. And I would also say, in addition to all of that, which I think the peer mediation is very important, actually having students be accountable to other students, I think would make a major impact, because nobody wants to be held accountable to many people in their grade, in their classroom, for what they did. But also, it's a tremendous stress, in addition to this, a tremendous stress on the staff. If you could probably go to a school, a GCPS school, and said, what would it be like if you had little to no discipline issues every day? I'm pretty sure that they would tell you all the ways in which they would be relieved. Because right now, the school staff, they take turns watching, the school suspension room. They take turns, having other disruptive kids go from one class to another, sending the kid next door, and then sometimes the kid is disruptive there. I mean, the discipline system is so ineffective, and it's left kids really kind of sometimes just in the hallway, because they're not listening to their teachers, and what they're going through is not being addressed. So it would save so much energy in the school system if we actually had something that worked and got to the root cause.
I agree. I agree. What we're doing isn't working.
It's not working.
Right. It really isn't working. And just not recording suspensions while you still shift that child out of their regular education environment doesn't work either. So it can't be just hide the hand that threw the rock.
Mm-hmm.
It must be an approach that really has an impact, a positive impact on everybody, like on the school climate, on the child who had been causing harm, on the kids who have not been harmed. How about that? Or who have been harmed. It needs to have a positive effect. And I think we have to be more intentional in what we look at. And I saw a note about wanting to learn more. What I will do is add some links to the chat, go look up some things, add it to the video so that you all can dig in more to restorative justice. I have learned that GCPS is starting to look at this, and there's a model running in, I believe it's Central Gwinnett. But we really need to look at this and how we blow this up. right? How we take a pilot, run it somewhere, and really start to infuse it and get staff to have buy-in. You have to have buy-in, and you have to have people trained in it. Please, let's not do it again like we did PBIS. Okay, let's not do it like we did PBIS. So we need to be very, very intentional. And I have no more comments, and I didn't see anything in the chat, but anything that's in there that I missed, I will definitely go back and add in some links and try to answer folks' questions. But really appreciate people joining in, learning more about police in schools, why this is such a harmful practice to our students, and how we have to stop this cycle somewhere. And this looks like a really good point to do it. Melody, you have any final words?
Yes, I would just say that I know that switching to a system, a different way of doing things can kind of sometimes be scary for people, and that they think that that it would make the school system unsafe. But the best way that we know that police officers do not stop school shootings. We know that in Parkland, actually the SRO waited outside of the building while the shooting was happening. And that it is, once an active shooter is in the building, it is hard for someone, even trained SWAT personnel, it's hard for them to stop that active shooter. So before we get to that part, we should invest in preventative measures and understand why a child is disgruntled. Instead of just passing them from room to room and place to place and kicking them out, that is going to lead to a bad situation. So instead of doing that, we need counselors, not cops. We need people who actually, because we know that when people actually have their needs met, that area, that community, that school is safer. And that's all we're saying. So we will hope that you would engage with us on how we can actually make that happen at GCPS.
Thank you. That is so, so, so important and so correct. It doesn't work. And we are talking about school safety. Nobody wants the students not to be safe. Mm-hmm. They have to be emotionally and physically safe, right, to truly be safe at school. So thank you for raising that, for sure, for sure. That ends it for us. We will add some links, answer any questions that you may have in the chat. And you all have a great night, and thank you for joining us.
Have a good night.